We have had a multitude of reincarnated into the body of a villainous character stories. We have had a multitude of the villainous is reincarnated into their past self so they can do something different type of stories. But have we ever had one where they've died 6 times and restarted? Well, now we do. 7th time loop, the villainess enjoys a carefree life married to her worst enemy. A title that honestly I feel is a little bit misleading, even though it does technically open up to the concept of the villainess, or at least she appoints herself as a villainess. It's so much more than that. I think it is a sad reality that we have right now. There is so many villainous isekais, there's so many villainous reincarnation stories that obviously it has become a marketing aspect. It is a popular genre right now, and so a lot of people are writing stories just to have this have to be put in it. You have to open it with her being told by the prince that he no longer wants her, and he's getting rid of his marriage, and she's turned into the worst person ever. We have to open like that, even though the rest of the story has nothing to do with your typical Otome game villainous stories. And it's kind of a sad thing because I think there's a lot of people that get pushed away by the idea of another villainous story. And yes, truth be told, when I came into this, my mindset always comes to, okay, another villainous story, I'm going to expect nothing and hope that I get a lot. And yes, with 7 time loop, I'm getting a lot from this story so far. And yes, part of that is the fact that she has been through essentially 6 lives before, and now she's on her 7th loop. But I'm going to get into that with my first impressions of the 7th time loop, a series that is airing in the winter 2024 anime season. Let's get into it. 7th time loop opens up with Riche, and Riche, unfortunately, at the time of the story opening, has pretty much been told by the prince of this kingdom that he's done with her. He is going to break off their engagement. He was told he has all this evidence that he's going to, wail against her. And what we kind of find out very quickly is that, yes, this is her 7th time restarting her life. It kind of jumps back to the very beginning. The very first time she lived out her life, at this point, the prince says that she's just devastated. Like, what am I going to do now? And he just lays all this evidence upon her. And eventually, she gets kicked out by her family. She's kind of kicked out on the street, and she, at some point, bumps into a merchant group. They bring her in, and from then on, her first life becomes essentially discarded by the kingdom and becomes a merchant. And she travels the world, and she does so many great things. Well, at some point, this war breaks out, she dies, and then it jumps right back to the point where the prince is saying, I'm getting rid of you, I'm no longer gonna marry you. And at that point, she's like pitching her cheek in front of him, and he's like, oh, you must be, broken by this whole thing. And she's like, nope, that's fine, bye. And then she leaves. And this is where we already have where she's going, okay, this is my second chance, let me do something that's better. So at this point, she decides, the one thing I regretted from my previous life is that I did not grab a bunch of stuff that I could sell and be a merchant with. So she decides to grab a whole bunch of stuff from her mansion before her parents kick her out, and then she goes out to meet the merchants, but they already passed. But this is the point where she decides to do something different in this new life. The second chance at life, she is going to become essentially an expert in medicinals. So she has this little book that her grandmother gave her at some point that has a lot of information about herbs and whatnot, and she studies in that. And she has a lot of fun. But again, dies during this war. Around the same exact time. It seems like a commonality throughout all these loops is that 5 years into her life, she will die, and it's always because of this war that breaks out. In the 3rd loop, again, pretty much just leaves the prince behind, runs off, and decides to study further in being a doctor. Again, dies during the war. The 4th loop, she decides to become a handmaid to a duke's household. The 5th loop, for some reason, is completely skipped. More on that later. The 6th loop, she disguises herself as a male and becomes a knight. In this one, yes, dies during the war, but particularly dies at the hands of the emperor himself that is actually starting the wars, Arnold Hein. With all this, we're caught up. We are now at the 7th loop. As the title led you to believe, this is the important one, so to speak. In this one, Riche does something she's never done before. When she's going to leave after saying goodbye to the prince, she actually takes a different route and decides that she's going to jump off this balcony. And she ends up bumping into that emperor, Emperor Arnold. Well, he's not an emperor yet. He's still a prince. And immediately she's like, oh, yeah, emperor. And he's like, wait, I'm not the emperor yet. And she's like, oh, I apologize. I'm a little flustered. I just got, broke up by the prince. Sorry, I gotta go. And she goes and jumps off the balcony. Well, this immediately catches his attention, and he decides to chase her down. When she gets back home, she ends up running into the prince, who's there just wanting to make a spectacle out of breaking up with her. He had like this big old list of all the crimes that he wanted to go through. He pre-planned it, and he just wants to completely destroy her. But yes, Riche doesn't care because she's heard it all before. But additionally, we also get to meet the girl that the prince met, Marie, who essentially is the one that basically tricked him into doing all this stuff. Rish says, I don't blame you. It's fine. I know you're doing it for your family, but make sure to do some of this stuff for yourself. Kind of gives her, again, little life lessons. But additionally, as Rish is trying to leave, suddenly, again, this Prince Arnold shows up and immediately attacks her. Now, she quickly parries it, and he knew for sure that she would because the way that she carries herself, he was sure that she was a skilled swordsman. Which, yes, is very fascinating to him that this noble girl is a swords fighter. But yes, immediately he says that he wants to marry her. And that is a complete shock to everybody, including the prince. Even the king of this kingdom shows up and he's apologizing to Arnold for his stupid son. Even apologized to Rish for his son doing everything that he did to her. But no, Arnold just says, look, I want to spend more time with this Rish girl. Other than that, that's fine. But yes, Arnold wants to marry Rish. Yes, this emperor that always eventually at some point will create this war that will lead to Rish's death. And at this point, she decides that she's going to accept to be his wife. But she has a lot of things that she wants in return. She will choose the trading company they go to for all the stuff for the actual wedding ceremony, which the assumption there is probably going to be Arya, which is the trading company that taught her everything that she needed to know about being a merchant. After marriage, she wants an area that she can receive guests from other countries, which he's like, yeah, that's normal for a princess. Additionally, she wants to live separate from the emperor. And he's like, that's fine, whatever you want. And lastly, she wants to lay eggs around the entire castle and not have any complaints. This new life, this seventh life, she has chosen that she just wants to be lazy because every loop before now, she's been working hard at something, being a merchant, traveling the world, being a doctor, studying night and day. Now she just wants to laze. But additionally, she also wants to at least figure out a way that she can live longer, go beyond this 5-year span that eventually lays to her death because of the war. But yes, additionally, she does not want him to lay a finger on her, which, yes, she will use against him on a regular basis. Every time he touches her, she will demand something. But yeah, at this point, they end up leaving the country, going back to his place, pretty much under the guise that she is a captive, like a noble woman that he has captured from another kingdom and is holding hostage. She gets her own little villa, which she decides to clean herself, even gets to know a lot of the maids, because eventually she will select which one of the maids is going to be her maids, and she wanted to get to know them first before they find out that she is this princess. Over time, we kind of get a sense of why Arnold picked Rish, and a lot of that has to do with she's kind of different. She is a noble woman, but at the same time, she acts in ways that noble women don't. She knows a lot of things that most people wouldn't seem as being worth it to even learn. Yes, technically, as a noble woman, especially one that would eventually wed the prince of the kingdom, yes, your expectations for them is just to learn how to dance, learn how to present themselves, learning about, medicinals and learning to be a doctor and all this other stuff, learning how to fight. All these things are things that just aren't really present. And this is a lot of things that kind of intrigue Arnold. She's not like anybody else. And everything that she does, which yes, most people would seem as being useless, he tells her is things that fascinate him. They're things that he will never see as useless because she took the time to learn it. And this is something that kind of throws her off. She doesn't quite know what the end goal is for Arnold. It just seems like it throws her off. At the same time, it seems like he's just more intrigued by her. She fascinates him and essentially entertains him. We also get a sense during their travels after they get attacked, he's not going out of his way to kill people. So it at least shows that this Arnold now is definitely not the Arnold that she eventually died to in one of her loops. This is a guy that seems like he is saving lives. He even knows every single one of his knights, the people that work under him, know everything about each one of them, and cares a lot for them. As we see this whole situation where a lot of them get hit by poison, she saves their lives, and he thanks her profusely. Thank you for saving my men. So it seems like he's a good guy. It just seems like at some point, something changed. Eventually, they will have a party, which is to reveal to the kingdom that he is looking for a wife in the empire itself, which is obviously all just a show because he's already got a wife that he has chosen. But she decides to tell him, look, present me. You don't have to go through all that. Just go out there and present. And of course, when they go to the party, there's all these men with their daughters, and they're like, hey, Prince, how was your trip? Here, tell the stories to my daughter. And he's like, no, not necessary. It was a boring travel, but I found my wife. And he turns to her and presents her, basically. They eventually have a dance. Everybody is amazed by them. They dance beautifully. And then we have this little scene off the side with the two of them where, yes, Rish points out that the way that he moves and everything, and yes, when they fought each other, she knows that was something odd about one side versus the other. His left shoulder is heavily scarred, which he's like, oh yeah, you somehow figured it out. Nobody really knows about this. but I have all these scars. And it seems like, based on her knowledge of being a doctor, that it looked as if somebody had stabbed that spot in his shoulder several times, as if they were trying to kill him. So, kind of leads you to believe that something really malicious happened to him in the past. And then it wraps everything up with her deciding her maids, which, yes, obviously there's one nasty maid, and of course she was going to choose her because she had potential there. But it kind of gets in this whole thing where one of the maids was being really nasty to the rest of them, trying to be chosen by this princess. But at the same time, yes, she wasn't acknowledging that many of them were struggling because they weren't from families of nobles that have fallen. They don't know how to read and write. And so it was like a humbling moment for this one maid, but eventually she chooses her anyways because she wants to start an academy for teaching maids. So she wants her to kind of head it and teach them how to read and write and all that kind of stuff. So that's how it kind of wraps up the 3 episodes. But my thoughts on the show so far. Let me start off by talking about that little elephant in the room. Obviously the most intriguing aspect of the story so far is the fact that she has lived now her 7th time. And with each one of these stories, it has a different thing that she kind of sought out. She has a thirst for knowledge. She has a desire for learning new things. Partly something that she learned very quickly in her restarts, and this idea that I liked getting this knowledge and applying that knowledge, and she constantly sought that knowledge. And so, yes, you can make an argument that this girl, I don't remember exactly how old she was from the very beginning, but she's pretty much lived 5 years, 6 times so far. And so she's probably up there in 50 or something like that years old, technically. She's had a lot of life knowledge, a lot of life experiences, and I like how it kind of applies each one of those to her new story. It is kind of like that aspect of, yes, somebody having a rebirth one time and thus using the knowledge they had previously, but it's always typically with these types of stories, always just simply avoid flags. That's not really the case here. It's more of I have this knowledge and I want to apply to it in my new life in some certain way while dodging the questions as to why I know that. Like she picks a lock at some point. She gets locked in a carriage when there's this attack, and so she picks a lock. And it points out that, yes, when she was a handmaid, the lady liked to lock herself up in a room a lot, and she had to be the one that picks the lock and gets her out of there. So I like that whole aspect. But, like I said, one thing stood out to me really quickly was the 5th. She just completely skipped it. She went from the 4th and goes, oh yeah, and then on to the 6th, and then on the 7th. And it never got into the 5th. Now, slight spoilers, it does technically show her outfit in the OP. And it kind of leads me to believe that it could be something of I don't know, there's a lot of, there's 2 different possibilities. One would explain why she didn't mention it, but the other one would be kind of more intriguing. So I'm really curious to see what that'll end up being. I'm thinking it's going to be something that's going to be either something that she doesn't want to talk about, like a darker point of her life or lives, or it's going to be simply something that is just something that can add a twist to things, but it's not something she really wants to talk about. And I'm really kind of curious what that'll end up being. But that aside, I think all this kind of adds to her character. I think she's a fantastic character, and the fact that she's never been able to go see this one empire that Arnold is a part of kind of gives it still something that she can discover, and she's not seeing things, again, like typically you'll get from a villainous isekai, which I guess I got to address at this point. This isn't really a villainous isekai. It's not a villainous rebirth or anything like that. Riche is Riche. Now, the thing that makes it a villainous is because, yes, it opened up with the prince who was swayed by this one cute girl to put a bunch of false claims upon her and make her out to be the nastiest person. But again, she always leaves the kingdom right after that. And so it's never really about that. What it is about is somebody that, again, has had so much life experience in so many lives that she's now applying to her new life. And it's doing a really good job of that so far. I do like how, I guess, grounded she is. I think what comes from all these life's experiences is life experience. She is essentially applying everything that she's experienced to other people with the maid. She's pointing out all this stuff that she's kind of learned in how to treat other people and how different each life is. She technically grew up being pampered, even though it wasn't a great life because she was forced to be what they expected her to be and not do anything else. And it wasn't until she got freed from it all that she was able to seek out other things. But at the same time, she is learning about the importance of money through that experience and the importance of knowledge in that experience. And she's able to give it to somebody else. I also like how it kind of applies to, yes, technically her interaction with Arnold. She doesn't really trust him, and yes, this guy technically did kill her. But I do like that kind of back and forth between the two of them because she doesn't trust him, doesn't know what his aim is, but at the same time, he's fascinated by what the outcome of her life experiences, because again, she can read him. She's a fighter. Again, knows all this stuff about medicines that she shouldn't know. Like her age, she has so much knowledge that she shouldn't really have. It intrigues him. And again, finds curiosity in what she's able to achieve and able to do. And again, that kind of creates an interesting chemistry. Now, I'm not quite sold on them. I'm not sold on the two of them quite yet. I think what probably will come from the two of them, which will probably be interesting in their relationship, is obviously the scar. And figuring out what makes him what he is. Because yes, her whole point in this life is to be lazy. She wants to take it easy this time. But additionally, she wants to take it easy for an extended period of time, not 5 years. So there is a part of this where she is trying to figure out what causes him to start a war. She knows that Arnold will eventually kill his father. He will take the throne, and he's going to go on this big war in 5 years. So she wants to stop that question mark. She hasn't really gone out and said it, but she doesn't want war. She doesn't like that. I'm curious how she's going to go about stopping it. What I'm assuming will eventually happen is something is going to trigger Arnold to go negative. Because right now he's a good person. Something's going to trigger him to turn nasty. And that's the question mark. What does that? It might have something to do with a scar. Somebody in probably his past wanted him dead. Is it a sibling? Is it a father? Maybe another prince that is trying to vie for the throne, and Arnold's the oldest and he's going to be in the way? Is it his father? Does his father hate him? Is that the reason why he kills father? That's all going to be the question mark. It could be the father becomes a mad king. Maybe Arnold having to kill his father drives him mad. Something negative happens, and I'm curious what that will be. She's obviously going to have to stop that because she doesn't want a war to happen, even though she presumably is on the good side. Not good side, but the side that's not going to lose. I mean, we don't know if Arnold wins that war. She just knows that she dies during that war. So Arnold could lose, but that's all in the question marks that are up there. I do have to say, I think my favorite part of these 3 episodes so far was definitely the ballroom scene. Mainly because I love not just a beautifully animated dance sequence, which it was a very beautifully animated. There was a few reused animation sequences, but for the most part, it was very beautifully animated. But more so in the idea that it was telling a story at the same time. Being close to Arnold, she immediately remembers that last time that she was close to Arnold, because this entire time she doesn't want him to touch her. There was this one time where she was close, which was when they were fighting. And again, that was a point where she noticed that there was a lack of response in one side versus the other, which is because his shoulders completely screwed up from being stabbed multiple times, which obviously did not heal properly. The skin itself, there's too much tension. But during the dance, she wanted to overtake him. She wanted to beat him. This time I'm close to him. I want to beat him this time. Let's see what he does if I can beat him. So she tries to take the lead in the dance, but she doesn't let him. So it kind of turns into the whole thing like a competition between the two of them, which is something that I kind of like between the two of them, is that competitive nature between them. It kind of was a thing right before this, and the idea that, she says that she's afraid of him more than anybody else in that room. And he's like, well, why would you be afraid of me? Well, I can't beat you in swordsmanship. Well, maybe we'll have to spar sometime. Like he's really wants to spar with her because again, she's different than everybody else. He likes that, and she's like, oh, that'd be great. I would love that. And maybe you can teach me your sword skill and everything like that. It's kind of a goofy little thing. And again, it shows that competition between the two of them that I think is, while I'm not completely sold on their relationship, I do like that. I like that competitiveness. I like that, like to try to figure her out kind of thing. The thing that she's so different and again comes from her life experiences. I am really hoping that they keep the chemistry between the two of them good, because obviously it seems like most of the story is that, I mean, you get some side things as well, like the fact that all the rest of the girls are really jealous of the fact that Rish stole his heart, and so they're trying to do nasty things. They have this one girl that was trying to prank Rish in front of everybody, and she's like, oh, obviously she put some chili or peppers or whatever inside of this drink, and immediately drinks it, and everybody freaks out because she doesn't freak out or anything like that. A little exchange between her and Ardell, and the idea that she wanted to give the wine its time, and it's lost its chance at having being drank normally, and so he decides to take the bullet for her. There, now it has fulfilled its purpose. Are you happy? It's managed to lay out a lot of interesting stuff in the story so far, and again, I think a lot of my enjoyment has been coming from how they placed out her lives that she's gone through. So I'll be curious to see how it plays out. And like I said, I'm extremely I still really badly want to find out what that 5th loop is, and I guess I can talk about it here. What I kind of assume based on the OP. So if you don't want to get my predictions it's just basically her clothing. You see what she's wearing, but her outfit looks like it could be a bandit, it could be an adventurer, it could be a traveler. It's just an outfit that it's a very kind of scout-like outfit that you would have with like a chest guard on it. So I'm kind of assuming that it could be something as positive, and I don't know why they would kind of skim over it, positive and okay as an adventurer, or it could be as dark as a bandit or a spy. I don't think it'll be a spy because I don't know necessarily what really experiences she would get from that besides, yeah, technically knowing when there's a spy in the room, she'd go, oh yeah, I was once a spy. I know how they act. I know how they maneuver and whatever. But I'm wondering if it's going to be something as dark as a bandit or something that would be something that she wouldn't want to bring up. Probably one of her darker experiences in life, which would lead itself into the idea of being a knight. I am kind of curious why she chose to make a maid training camp. I'm wondering if it might tie into that idea of possibly being a spy before, that she might use the maids, send them out to certain families, and then use them as spies. That would be really intriguing, but it just might be the idea of applying her knowledge and being a handmaid. But I'm really enjoying it so far. Visually, it's fine. Like I said, that whole ballroom scene was beautiful. There's a couple little scenes in exchange between the characters that I think are really well presented. I think overall, they're doing a really good job of it. My only complaint I would have is the coloring style for the hair. I've never really liked the whole like tacky airbrush kind of look. Like it reminds me of like, I don't know, 20 years ago having, something being, spray painted with airbrush, and it was so cool back then. And it has that like overly emphasized color difference in the shading that it kind of reminds me of a tacky airbrush. But it's not bugging me. It doesn't stick out too much, so I'm fine with it. But other than that, it has been looking good. So, and a lot of the fight sequences and stuff like that look really fantastic. So hopefully they'll keep this up. And I think based on the ballroom scene, it seems like it's going to keep up. So that's a huge plus for it. But anyways, that's my thoughts on 7th Time Loop. The villainess enjoys a carefree life married to her worst enemy. We'll see how this goes from here, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure that like button down below, comment. Let me know what you think of the series so far if you're going to be checking it out. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button so you get my content and news reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, I have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, membership button down below. Really appreciate it, but it does. Y'all take care.